Good night, I'm Gabriela Damián Mirabete, and as a Volcanista, I'm thrilled to present two women that are very important for me as a writer. Isabel Allende, who showed me the power of the written word with Paula, and Magda Bogin, with whom I am incredibly grateful for admitting me as a fellowship of La Página Dorada, because being part of Under the Volcano changed my life. So, New York-based writer Magda Bogin is the founder and director of Under the Volcano. Novelist, translator, poet, and librettist, she has taught in the writing programs of Columbia, Princeton, and City College. She has published numerous translations from both French and Spanish, including Isabel Allende's House of the Spirits. Isabel Allende is a beloved Chilean journalist and author. Her best-known works include the novels The House of the Spirits and City of the Beasts. She has written over 20 books that have been translated into more than 35 languages.
Isabel, welcome. I'm so pleased to be sharing this metaphorical stage with you after all these years.
Hola, Magda.
So I was wondering, as an opening question, really, why this book now? What made you write this? What made you turn to Spain? And back to the defeat of so much hope with the collapse of the Republic, and then the long arc to Chile.
Well, I had the story with me for 40 years. I was living in exile in Venezuela in the 70s, and I met a Catalan man. He was called Victor Pey, and he had fled from the Civil War to France in 1939, and he was one of the passengers of the Winnipeg, the ship that Pablo Neruda bought to send these refugees to Chile. So he went to Chile, lived there for more than 30 years, made a life, and then there was first a socialist government, Salvador Allende, and he was a good friend of Salvador Allende, and then when we had the military coup on September 11th, 1973, and he was arrested and everything that happened to him that was brutal. He ended up in Venezuela in his second exile. And there we met, and he told me the story. And I carried it with me for decades. And then last year, I felt the need to tell it because why do I want to write a story at a certain time and not before or after? Probably because there is something in the air that there is like a collective noise that I tap into. And in that collective noise, the theme of refugees, migrants, asylum seekers, people displaced is vibrant. I hear it all the time, also because I have a foundation that works with refugees. And given that that has been also the theme of the Trump administration, this making the immigrants scapegoats for everything, I remembered the story, and I have been in touch with Victor Pey all these years. He returned to Chile eventually after the dictatorship ended. And so he helped me with the research and with the details that I could not find anywhere else. And unfortunately, Victor died 6 days before I could send him the manuscript dedicated to him. He was 103 years old, strong and lucid, a good friend.
But this is a very interesting way of passing on one man's story and expanding it enormously into a whole historic kind of, almost it's like a mural. And it made me wonder also whether you feel a sense of mission in bringing this level of political awareness and memory forward. I almost felt at times reading it as if maybe a younger person than I might not even know about the Spanish Civil War. And so I'm just curious whether that's also operating for you as a writer. Do you think ahead, John just talked about the next generations, and are you thinking of them as you write with such an abundance of detail?
No,
No.
I'm not trying to deliver a message. I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything. I'm not trying to teach. That's not my job. I just want to tell a story that is important for me. And for certain people, it might be important too, but that's not my plan when I think of a book. I don't imagine how it will be received, because that depends on each reader. And I suppose it depends also the language, the culture, the moment when people read it. So that was not my intention at all. And if it took me so long to write it, and I did so many other things in between, it's probably because the theme wasn't relevant before, so relevant. There are today almost 80 million refugees or displaced people in the world, most of them women and children. And because it has been the theme in the United States during the campaign and the Trump administration, it resonated with me, and that's why I wanted to tell it.
So another question that arises for me reading this latest book of yours, The Long Petal of the Sea, which I think might be visible on the screen here. I hope so.
I think I have it here somewhere. Here.
I can also hold it up. Voila.
I have it here.
And we both have it.
Yeah.
Is that there's no magical realism, is it? And people so associate you with a style known as magical realism, where sort of extraterrestrial almost things happen, supernatural things happen. In this book, what we see is resilience. And it seems actually very grounded in that. And in the wonderful character of Roser, the woman that holds everything together all through it and believes in survival, the pianist. So I was curious whether you feel that you've left magical realism behind, or sort of just didn't happen in this book. Where would you situate it?
Well, I have written 25 books, and magic realism appears in only some of them when the story requires it or allows it, because sometimes it doesn't. And it's not like salt and pepper that you can sprinkle it everywhere. What is magic realism? There is a difference between, as you know, between magic realism and fantasy. Magic realism is accepting that the world is a very mysterious place and that we don't have an explanation for everything that happens, but we see manifestations of the mystery. Let's say coincidences, prophetic dreams, miraculous healing, adivination, so many things that we can't explain, we can't control, and yet we see them all over. And they manifest in different ways depending on the culture. When it happens in Haiti, we call it voodoo. When it happens in California, we call it crystals or astrology or whatever. So it's not in all of my books. And this story in Long Petal of the Sea is a very realistic story. It's a story of war, of displacement, and it's also a love story. And magic realism wouldn't fit there, but I have not left it behind in the sense that if I can use it in the future, I will, of course. It's one of the resources that I have in my life also, not only in my writing.
Finally, question for you, Isabel. It almost feels that this book is like a bookend to Casa de los Espíritus, because it ends in Chile. We even have a tiny appearance of some of the characters from Casa de los Espíritus, House of the Spirits, just by name, not so much by personality. But it had to cross my mind, and I'm sure some readers, does this bring you full circle? Is it the kind of closing of a cycle, or, I leave you to answer this, is there another book already in the offing?
Yeah, I just finished another novel. Well, first I published this year, I published a memoir that is not fiction. It's here. Mm-hmm. This is in Spanish. And it's about being a woman and about being a feminist all my life. And it's coming out in English in March. And then in the rest of the pandemic months, I wrote a novel and I just finished it. And I hope to be free by the end of this month so that I can start thinking, what am I going to do next year? Because I don't think we are coming out of this pandemic very soon. And I need to be occupied or I'll go crazy and drive everybody crazy around me.
I understand that you begin a new novel every January 8th. So is that how 2021 is going to begin for you?
Yes, of course. Now, what am I going to write? I have no idea, Magda. Really, I don't.
Well, thank you, Isabel, for sharing these thoughts and reflections with us. It's really wonderful of you to
Thank
pop
you.
in like this to Tepoztlan again. We
Thank
so
you.
appreciate it.
Thank you for the invitation.